Okay, good afternoon and welcome to this WikiLeaks press conference on Thursday the 19th of January 2017, one day before the inauguration of a new president. Questions can be submitted with the hashtag AskWL on Twitter. Joining me, the publisher and editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange. Good afternoon, Julian.
Good afternoon.
Okay. So without further ado, let's get on to the questions so we can fit as many in as we can during the time. The first question is from Craig Britton, who asks, Julian, do you feel that John Brennan is harbouring a grudge against WikiLeaks?
Well, John Brennan is the head of the CIA in most of the second term of Obama. The answer is I don't know. Normally, as an analyst of political affairs, we don't look at things in terms of personal grudges. We think it's has usually poor explanatory power, although I know that's popular in the press, but rather what someone's interests are and what position they hold within an institution or a culture which also has interests. But John Brennan, in his testimony before Congress Thursday before last at the John McCain put together in the Senate, he does act a little unusually when he's asked a question about me personally. In fact, he almost spits. It's possibly related to that we published materials allegedly from a 16-year-old hacker up in the North Midlands of England, which was his private security clearance application form and a review from the CIA and the Auditor General saying that his company, TAC, was one of the least credible and worst performing companies in a particular contract that it was going for. That was before he was head of the CIA. Obviously, that type of thing, if you're hacked allegedly by a 16-year-old kid and you're the head of the CIA, and what is published is quite embarrassing to your prestige, then perhaps you take it personally. But I think generally personal, emotional explanations are not don't have much explanatory power when dealing with senior officials.
Okay, thank you. A human rights lawyer, Renata Avia, asks how many journalists are under investigation for their collaboration in Cablegate publications and subpoenas.
It's a very interesting question. The answer is unknown. That's part of the problem with the US case against WikiLeaks and me, which was erected by the Department of Justice and with the grand jury being in Alexandria, Virginia. The National Security Division of the Department of Justice and the Criminal Division have been running that case since the middle of 2010. They maintain, as of this year, that it continues. It's something that has affected many people in the United States in its investigation. Around half a dozen individuals have gone into exile. The FBI infamously flew a jet load of 6 FBI agents and 2 prosecutors illegally into Iceland to interrogate people there. They paid informants more than $5,000 in cash bribes with rendezvous in Denmark, which the Danish government says that it didn't authorize, therefore would have been illegal also under Danish law. There has been many attempts by the press in the United States and our lawyers and Chelsea Manning's lawyers and EPIC, the Electronic Privacy Information Center, and the EFF to get hold of some of the status of that investigation, who it's affected, what possibly illegal investigative techniques have been used. For example, warrants were issued to Google, search warrants on our journalists' emails. They took all of them. Now, of course, we don't use Google for for our work, but they had their old personal accounts there, and of course that's something that affects them and their families and the lawyers, etc. They're being communicated with. So that from our perspective, strategically, the issue is this. We have had a 7-year-long investigation being run by the Department of Justice, National Security Division and Criminal Division, pulling in a range of other US government agencies, including, according to paperwork, the CIA, the NSA, the State Department, Defense Intelligence Agency. What is our ability to litigate that case? Because so far, that case is being protected under grounds of secrecy from the press. They maintain in court filings this year that to reveal any substantial information about that case would be to negatively affect the pending prosecution. But what we have as a result is process as punishment. We don't have the material made public enough for us to grab hold of illegalities in the case, which we assume are there, and start to litigate it. There is effectively a Hoover Dam of Freedom of Information Act requests held back by this excuse that to release information about the enormous case against WikiLeaks would be to compromise the pending prosecution. And it really is a large case. There's not only, we can see this by people being pulled into the grand jury and so on, and those other activities, but statements made by the US government officially to Australian diplomats, which reported those cables back to the Australian government, maintained that the United States said that it was of unprecedented scale and nature.
Okay, AJ Vitsons, who is a reporter at Mother Jones, asks, it's unclear that there was ever an extradition request from the US in the first place. Can you confirm or prove that it exists?
Well, this is exactly the problem. Journalists need to be asking those questions of the Department of Justice. What is the purpose of maintaining this case? As of this year, 2007, they maintain, DOJ Criminal Division, National Security Division, that the case proceeds. But what is the purpose of it? It doesn't make sense to keep it going for 7 years, unless you have a sealed indictment that you're waiting to serve on people. Now, our lawyers have asked the United Kingdom, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, to tell us, have they received a US extradition request for me yet? And the response by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office is they refuse to confirm or deny whether they've received such a request. Similarly, when journalists ask the FCO for information about its correspondence with the DOJ in relation to me, they refuse to confirm or deny even the existence of such correspondence. And just today, L'Espresso reporter Stefania Morizzi has got a response back from the UK Crown Prosecution Service saying once again that it refuses to confirm or deny whether there is an extradition request live in the United Kingdom from the United States, but it also maintains that it has so many pages in its file that it would be too expensive to even count them all. We put that out on Twitter a few hours ago.
Okay, thank you. Now this from a user, Craig Britton, who asks, Julian, do you feel that John Brennan is harbouring a grudge against WikiLeaks?
Yeah, I already asked that one.
Okay. Moving on to Reuters, Mr. Assange, will you leave the embassy and give yourself up now? If not, will you give yourself up when Manning is released?
There has been no change in the position. I stand by what I've said. we're very, very happy that Manning has received clemency. It's a major strategic victory to have achieved that, both for Chelsea Manning and everything that she has had to suffer over the last 7 years. That was a terrible case. Barack Obama should have granted her clemency at the least in his first term. There was no need to wait for such a long period to do it. But also because it sheds light on the problems with the broader case. The broader case, according to the FBI, has far more pages in it. By 2013, they say they had accumulated 42,135 pages in the case against WikiLeaks and its founders, managers, and owners, which presumably refers mostly to me. So I stand by what I said. I'm open to, we look forward to having a conversation with the DOJ about what the correct way forward is. We say, of course, that they should immediately drop their case, or they should unseal their extradition request if they have one, unseal their charges if they have one. I'm confident about winning any US case that is respecting the law in the United States, because WikiLeaks is a publisher, and as a publisher, our activities are protected by the First Amendment. WikiLeaks, as a publisher, has won every single legal procedure that it has been involved in, bar none. But what is occurring in the United States is an attempt to prevent us and our lawyers getting our teeth stuck in to this case and getting standing by keeping it secret.
Okay. CNN ask, and I'm sure this is a question lots of people have, do you still stand by your offer to be extradited to the US after Chelsea Manning's sentence has been commuted?
I stand by everything I said, including the offer to go to the United States if Chelsea Manning's sentence was commuted. It's not going to be commuted to May. We can have many discussions to that point. Now, interestingly, the Obama White House, in order to, well, maybe it's the truth, but perhaps in order to look tough, has distanced itself, and it says that they didn't give Chelsea Manning clemency because of my offer in September and later on. So it's not something that can be taken away, the clemency, politically at least, because the Barr administration says it's not dependent on anything that I do. But I've always been willing to go to the United States, provided that my rights are respected, because this is a case that should never have occurred. It is fundamentally unjust in relation to my staff, in relation to WikiLeaks as a publisher, in relation to the terrible precedents it will set under the First Amendment. Now, let's not forget that Barack Obama, in his term in office, initiated more criminal investigations and prosecutions of journalists and whistleblowers than all previous administrations combined. In fact, 3 times as many, going all the way back to 1917 when the Espionage Act was introduced. So under this administration, there has been an epidemic of press crackdowns and crackdowns on alleged sources by the Obama administration abusing the Espionage Act to do it.
Okay. A user, Deplorable Putty Cat, asks, the press state that Chelsea Manning put lives at risk. What proof do you have that she didn't endanger US military personnel?
It's a very good question. Now, at the time of our alleged Manning leaks in 2010, the Iraq War Diaries, Afghan War Diaries, and US diplomatic cables most famously, the Pentagon, the Obama administration, and the press trying to hype up an issue put about the false claim or rather the false suggestion, the Pentagon never directly claimed it, but rather suggested it, and the press took the qualifiers off that suggestion, that people had come to harm as a result of our publications. That is entirely false. The US government had to admit under oath in 2013 that it could find no one who had come to harm as a result of our publication. Not US soldiers, not Afghanis, not civilians, etc. No one.
Okay. And Twitter user @thestory21 goes on to ask, as a journalist stroke publisher, aren't you then protected under the US Constitution?
Yes, we say this case is entirely bogus. It's obviously bogus. The UN has denounced it, the ACLU has denounced it, Human Rights Watch has denounced it. There seems to be a degree of shyness by the DOJ in exposing that case such that we can effectively litigate it. Now, there has been attempts at litigation to get hold of the details by EPIC, by other journalists, by us, and those are aggressively resisted by the DOJ. And the last judgment in the Freedom of Information Act case against the DOJ judgment was in January, just a few days ago.
Thank you. And Twitter user Logan asks, Julian, what do you think the future of journalism looks like in the US when some journalists seem to try and push for censorship?
It's a sad thing. In some ways, right now is a golden age of journalism in English because it's becoming so cheap to become a publisher. So there's a lot more variety in publishers that are cropping up. Each one has their different interests and different angles. Each one has their different loyalties, and this clash of voices is more likely to reveal the truth. But on the press side, we have good friends in the press and good collaborators amongst journalists, and we've won many awards ourselves. But there is a lot of bad journalists. It's true. There's a lot of bad journalists, not accurate, and who are not loyal to protecting the basic interests of the press, the American people, and people globally, which is the right to speak and to publish and to communicate to each other. And we can see that in just the past few days, for example, where instead of naturally shifting focus from the Chelsea Manning clemency and asking, how did this case come about? Where is it? What aspects of it are still going forward? The case against WikiLeaks, the case against me at the DOJ, why all the secrecy, etc. There's been a type of frankly disturbing glee trying to recontextualize some of my remarks, hoping or lusting, it even seems, for my extradition to the United States for an entirely bogus case, which would set a very deleterious precedent for people's rights to publish across the board. So come on, guys, what are you doing? You're going to take yourselves out just like that if you keep carrying on jumping after every ball the administration throws.
Okay, and a further Twitter user, Coke Gremlin, asks, will your commitment to transparency and opening up governments continue to extend into this upcoming administration?
Yes, it's a very interesting time with the new Trump administration. From a security publisher point of view, who specializes a lot in national security issues, this conflict which has developed between the embryonic Trump administration and the Central Intelligence Agency, and perhaps a few other agencies, but centrally focused on the Central Intelligence Agency, we think will lead to dissidents and sources in both camps coming forward. We've already seen that on the CIA side and from the Obama administration, with information coming out about Trump, a lot of it unfortunately not very well sourced or not high quality, but perhaps in the future we'll see higher quality. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to that conflict and other conflicts which will occur amongst this new administration. There has been cabinet members in this new administration which have said appalling things in the past about the rights of the press, the bona fide rights of the press, and WikiLeaks, and myself personally. So we are under no illusions that there are people in that cabinet that are of significant concern to WikiLeaks, and should be of significant concern to those concerned with press freedoms in general. We have to see whether their words in office are different to their words out of office, where you're opposition trying to get attention. But yeah, we can see a big fight ahead, perhaps, and looking forward to it.
Okay, now there's obviously a lot of interest on this subject, so just going back to the previous subject about your extradition and so forth, Joe Uchil asks, you say you would come to the US if your rights are protected. What rights are not protected?
Well, that's a very interesting question. At the moment, what we know, and it's a matter of public record, and the US DOJ admits it, that there has been a 7-year-long attempt to build a prosecution against WikiLeaks, and my name is on several of the subpoenas and warrants, and they're saying as of this year it's active and ongoing. Now, the warrants have 5 charge types. They have the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act Section 1A, which was defined by the Patriot Act as electronic terrorism. What the hell is going on with trying to say that publishing is electronic terrorism? There is a general conspiracy statute, which seems to be trying to suggest that if one person in a media organization receives information from a source and then communicates it to others in the same media organization, a collaborative process, which is how investigative journalism is done within a publisher, then the entire media organization, or at least all those people involved in the analyzing, assessing, transforming, and publishing, can likewise be swept up into a conspiracy and be subject to various warrants under the allegation of conspiracy. General conspiracy, conspiracy to commit espionage, where the United States government is defining national security journalism as espionage. Espionage itself, the same thing. So this is a pretty big concern, because the espionage statute, for example, does not permit a public interest defense. It doesn't permit you to say no one was harmed, for example, or the reason why something was published. That's a bit of a concern. But we have to have a discussion with the DOJ about what is their proposal. At the moment, they don't have a proposal. At the moment, we call them up and they refuse to say anything at all and continue on with their process. Something has to stop, and if it takes me going to the United States to encourage the Obama administration to get Chelsea Manning out of prison, I was very happy to do that. And if it takes me going to the United States to somehow flush out this case and get the DOJ to either make a charge or an extradition or to drop it, then we're interested in looking at that as well.
Okay, and another question that's coming up quite a bit from Twitter user Ryan Cotton. Why does WikiLeaks seem to focus solely on the United States?
Good question. It doesn't. It's absolute nonsense. In the last months, we've published hundreds of thousands of documents about other countries, Germany and Turkey included. In fact, in total volume, way more than we published through the entire US election cycle. So it's, people of a particular culture or a particular language group, they're interested in their culture and their language group. So there's a selection bias that people read about things that are connected to them And when we publish in a different language about a different culture, people are not aware of it.
Okay. And, okay, maybe moving on to a slightly different subject so we can get through a few of them. Jeff Roberts has submitted a question. The United Nations requested the UK and Sweden to immediately release Julian a year ago. Why is he still detained?
Good question. Yesterday, the United Nations put out another statement calling for the UK and Sweden to respect their finding that I had been unlawfully deprived of liberty since 2010 in prison under house arrest, and the last 4.5 years at this embassy where my asylum rights are not being respected by the British and Swedish government. Now, the UK, that decision by the UN was in February 5, announced publicly. 16 months of litigation where I, backed up by some great lawyers, including the late John Jones, litigated 2 states, the UK and Sweden, in front of a 5-jurist panel, and we won. They lost comprehensively, and so that order was made. Now, that was February 5. The UK appealed, and on November 29, it was announced the UK had also lost that appeal.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Linda Whaley asks, what can US individuals, and I think you can probably expand that out to include everyone, what can US individuals do to protect and promote the truth?
Well, other than opening up your wallets, go to wikileaks.org and make sure we're really cashed up for a year of conflict ahead, part of it coming from the past year. Well, I look at things in 2 ways. So either you have time or you have a skill or financial resources. If you have financial resources, then you should give them to those organizations which seem to be quite efficient in what they are doing in promoting the freedom of press. Obviously, that's WikiLeaks, organizations like Courage, Freedom of Press Foundation, Electronic Frontier Foundation in the United States, Wow Holland Foundation in Germany. Amnesty International Spain has done a really good job with the Manning case, with the Manning clemency. Or if you have a skill, then you can say, okay, you could either volunteer or you could just do more work with the skill. And as a result of doing more work with the skill, perhaps you can actually earn more that can then go to someone else with the skill, and that's more efficient. Or if that is not a direct translation, then you can use that skill directly to volunteer for some of these organizations, or do something on your own, start your own thing. Yeah. So, if you just have time, then and no skills and no money, then use that time in the public debate to correct, factual inaccuracies, for example, or to amplify those people who are doing good work.
Okay. And Gabriel MacArthur asks via Twitter, how do you maintain you and your staff's morale?
That's an interesting question. At different times of the year, I guess there might be different views on what the morale is like. But, I'm in a luxurious position as a head of an organization, which is everyone can understand that my situation is definitely worse than all the other staff in the organization. So I guess part of how I maintain morale is everyone goes, well, God damn it, if Julian can do it in that situation, then I can do it in the situation that I'm in. For myself, well, I love what we're doing. I like to think, who wouldn't like to do the sort of stuff that WikiLeaks does? We help understand the world in a way which was never done before. We have published more than 10 million documents. that never appeared in the public record before. That's a kind of rebel library of Alexandria, a great intellectual fruit that has contributed to justice all around the world, releasing innocent people from prison, taking their place in a variety of elections, leading to all sorts of reforms, entering into academic process, etc. So at the same time, we're not just involved in historical intellectual work of building this wonderful archive of material that would never have appeared in the world were it not but for our work and the work of our sources, but we're involved in the conflict of defending it, more broadly defending our rights to publish, and encompassing within that the rights of others to also publish and secure information in the way that we do.
Okay, a slightly technical question here, but again, it's one we're getting a lot of requests about. Curry Dobson asks, do you have any concern about the RiseUp.net canary being expired?
So this concerns something interesting, which is a technique developed in response to gag orders, principally in the United States, but also extending to some other countries as well. Well, the gag order will say, for example, if the government has forced you to hand over information, then you're not allowed to tell people that you have. Okay, so a technique was developed called a canary, which is, say, every 3 months, you say that you haven't received a gag order and handed over information. And that's the normal course of business. And then if you don't do that 1 month, then the effective statement is that you have received a gag order, and that's why you can't say that you haven't received a gag order, because you have received a gag order. It's a bit unknown how this works in practice in law, and whether there's some ways around it. But it seems to be that while gag orders can stop people speaking, and warrants can force people to modify devices or turn over information, at least in the United States, there's not a mechanism to force people into speech acts. And so there's a quite well-known organization, RiseUp, which is a great little sort of ISP and mail provider in Seattle that's been involved in many years in pushing the frontiers for freedom of speech and communication and security. And it was perhaps late with its warranty canary statement. It doesn't affect WikiLeaks. We assume that any email provider, for example, WikiLeaks doesn't use any particular email provider, and we assume that email itself is compromised. So it's not something that affects us. RiseUp, on their behalf, have said that none of their information is affected, but there's clearly something like an attempted subpoena or something like that for RiseUp, which is why they're saying that they needed to take legal advice but can't talk about it. But we don't have I don't have other insights. One of our lawyers does have a bit more insight, but that's only a single source, so I'm not going to speak about it today.
Okay, so we might be getting close to the end here. We might have time for just a question or two more. Again, a lot of questions on this subject. I'll pick a user at random, such as Harris, who asks, how soon can we expect to see new publications?
Well, WikiLeaks has a big publishing year ahead, as I said last year. The prominence of our publications in the US electoral cycle, where they, for the 5 weeks leading into November 8, were the most discussed topic on Facebook, according to Facebook, most discussed political topic, according to Facebook, and the most discussed topic on Twitter about politics, according to independent statistical survey done on Twitter. So that exposure has, like it always does with WikiLeaks actually, encourages other sources to come forward. So we have a lot of material to get through. It takes time. We do have a perfect record for accurate vetting of what we've published going back for 10 years. So that's such a valuable reputation that we don't want to lose it. So it can take us a little while to get through things and to format them and verify them, etc. If you want it to go faster, well, go to wikileaks.org and contribute in one way or another. But I'm very excited. It's information that concerns everyone. Some information for some countries, big corporations, government behavior, etc. I like doing this, and I'm in love with the publications that we have coming.
Okay. And obviously in Europe we have a lot of elections coming up this year, French, German, possibly Italian. On the same vein, user Logan asks, do you have any plans to release and or highlight current documents in the upcoming election in Germany?
Well, we already have. We have published more than 60,000 pages of material about the BND, Bundesgeheimdienst, NSA inquiry in the German parliament. So after the Snowden revelations in 2013, the Bundestag set up a inquiry panel to look into whether the BND had been illicitly passing information to the National Security Agency. And there's several findings out already, and the answer is yes, they had. And they'd also engaged in a number of unlawful domestic programs, at least a dozen, which were found to have violated German law in terms of what they were keeping and holding. So we published those. The response was interesting. The first response was, there was a thought that this was probably a parliamentary insider. The second response came out through Focus magazine. And Focus magazine is a magazine that is notorious, at least within WikiLeaks, as having a very close relationship with the BND. In fact, we exposed them in 2009 as having met more than 54 times just one of their journalists with a BND handler, and they were involved in hunting down the sources of other journalists. So Focus magazine put out a statement from a government security official, pretty clearly a BND official, claiming that it was likely, or they assessed that it was likely, that this material that we had published from the German parliament actually came from Russian hackers. So clearly resonating with certain attacks on us by some members of the US press. And just 2 weeks later, the Commission of Inquiry into the leak, a formal prosecutor was appointed by the German Parliament to investigate. They came out and said, no, actually, we think this must have come from the German Parliament. They gave a simple argument. For example, they say that some Russian hack they had had back in 2015 had taken 30 megabytes or 50 megabytes of data, but we had published 90. So it was literally impossible that it could have been the Russians. But there is that environment now where you can see the incentives. So whatever propaganda Russia may be putting out through RT or elsewhere, and it certainly has its angle on things, you can see the incentives for incumbents like Merkel, just like we could see with Clinton, to try and hype up an issue about potential Russian involvement. It's not that they have a genuine opposition. It's not that the people are annoyed with misbehavior in government, and of course there is. I'm not saying anything particular about Merkel's government, but as a government, it misbehaves. well, as an attempt to go, any criticism of governmental misbehavior, corruption, or incompetence, well, it's not the opposition, the people making a fuss. No, it's secretly the Russians. So that's something we're going to see, I assume, in the German election, in the French election, regardless of what the Russians are doing or not doing.
Okay, so if we can just finish off by moving back to the US, because obviously most of our audience is there. A question from Jay Paul, who asks, why do you think Obama's approval ratings are so high and Trump's are so low?
I'm not sure. I mean, I don't have statistical information on it. Trump is not a politician. He's a beginning politician. So he says things that are confrontational or easy to take out of context or offend people. So that would be a prime reason. And Obama's rather slick. But similarly, it's true that the majority of the media, perhaps with the exception of Fox News, was fully in the tank for Clinton during this election cycle. And kind of whipped up a class hysteria about, what they were saying was effectively that the leader of the white trash was going to take over and would all be a terrible disaster. And everyone within that class had to rally together to prevent this from happening. I'm not defending Trump or his policies. Obviously he's made quite a number of statements which we object to. But by the same token, I don't think I'm saying anything new by saying that there was a deeply partisanized atmosphere in this election. There has been in previous elections in the United States, but more than other elections. And the behavior on the press on both sides, but the majority was on the Clinton side, was terrible in terms of accuracy. Absolutely terrible. And as a result, according to Pew surveys, the respect for the press is at a record low in the United States.
Okay. Now, I hope we've been able to take questions both not only from news organisations but also members of the public as well. We do like to try and balance it as much as we can. But I'm going to move back now to a question from a news organisation, Fox News, who asks, you offered to go to the US where there is no extradition order and no charge. Why don't you go to Sweden where there is an extradition order and possible charge?
Good question. First of all, in the United States, that's exactly the problem. Is there an extradition order? Is there a charge? The US Department of Justice behaves exactly like it does as if there's a sealed indictment. My Washington, D.C. lawyer, Barry Pollack, said that he believes it's much more probable than not that there is already a sealed charge. It's the way that federal charges are done. Nearly all of them are produced by grand juries. There's been a grand jury in this case. The grand jury issues a sealed indictment. The sealed indictment turns into a sealed extradition request. The British government refuses to confirm or deny whether there's already one there. But even if there wasn't, the US can issue one at any time. So there's either a deliberate attempt by the Department of Justice to keep me and WikiLeaks in a state of uncertainty, abusing the process for psychological gains, refusing to confirm or deny whether they have already issued such a request, but saying that the pending proceedings continue, or there is a sealed indictment. And it's an offence for any official to reveal the existence of a sealed indictment. Now, in relation to Sweden, I was granted asylum at this embassy because of the persecution involved in the US case. It's not just whether there is the existence of a sealed indictment or not. A lot has happened in this case in the United States, with people being hauled into the grand jury, forced to testify, warrants being spewed out all over the place for information, plane loads of FBI agents illicitly engaged in activities interrogating people in other countries, etc. So there's a lot going on. In relation to Sweden, let's be clear. I have never been charged at any stage. I have already been previously cleared by the Chief Prosecutor of Stockholm in relation to exactly the same allegation. And the United Nations twice this year has formally found that I am being illegally detained in relation to it. Now, despite all that, I have asked, and my lawyers have asked, and the state of Ecuador has asked, that Sweden simply give a guarantee that I'll not be extradited to the United States. And they refuse to do so, absolutely refuse. And instead, this enormous fuss and expense and diplomatic costs at the UN, they go through a lot to simply not issue a guarantee that is perfectly normal in international extradition proceedings.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and do you think you'll receive different treatment under a Trump Department of Justice than you have under an Obama Department of Justice?
It remains to be seen. The good news is that there's a Chelsea Manning clemency. Everyone can see that was a bogus case, at least I hope on the Democratic side. That it was incredibly excessive, etc. And that's on the alleged source end. Obviously, whatever duties a soldier has to obey their orders, although you can of course argue that there are higher orders like the Constitution and the law, and you need to obey that as well, not just your army orders. Whatever duties that exist there, they are clearly higher than the duties that a publisher has. A publisher has the duty to do what? A publisher has the duty to publish. That's its number one duty. That's what its function is in society. That's what its claim is before the public. And I'm an Australian citizen publishing from Europe. What the hell is going on with this jurisdictional overreach of trying to apply US law which shouldn't be applied to publishers even in the United States because of the First Amendment, trying to apply US law to an Australian publisher publishing from Europe. This is an absurd overreach which chills the climates for publishers to scrutinize and help the public understand what is going on with the most powerful organizations in our state. And why is it important for the most powerful organizations to be scrutinized? Well, because when they get it wrong, when they act badly or incompetently, it is that power, that military, intelligence, or governmental power, or the power of an enormous corporation like Google, it is that power that can cause widespread systematic damage and loss of life, as it has done, as we have seen in Syria, in Iraq, and Libya.
Okay, thank you. Twitter user No More War asks, is there a possibility Trump's cabinet was pre-picked prior like Obama's was?
That's a good question. One of my favorite documents from the Podesta emails that we published is correspondence with John Podesta and a Citibank official. That Citibank official seemed to be the primary person putting together the Obama cabinet back in 2008. Now, those people who remember that period will remember that Obama was big with the banks. He got a lot of cash from the banks, and it seems to have translated into his senior Citibank executive been absolutely central, and creating the lists of people who would be on the cabinet. And if you look at the first Obama cabinet and compare it to the proposed lists, more than 50% of the people, according to an article in New Republic which analysed it, were on the Citibank list. So it'd be interesting to think what the equivalent is in the Trump cabinet selection. There's not perhaps it is, it does seem to be Jared and Pence and filters going through them that are making the pick. It's not obvious yet, but we do see three ex-Goldman Sachs people in the Trump cabinet. Now, according to public reportage, that's come through his son-in-law, Jared, but I haven't confirmed that myself.
Okay. And moving back onto Chelsea Manning, a user asks, why aren't the media asking the editors of The Guardian and New York Times why they aren't getting on a plane to go to the US?
Well, they should be. They should be asking precisely how can it be proper for the DOJ to have continued this investigation against WikiLeaks and me personally for 7 years, resulting in a circumstance where the UN has been activated and found that I have been arbitrarily detained, where Ecuador has engaged in its asylum process, and where I've been kept without sunlight in this embassy for 4.5 years, away from my children and so on. That's a pretty serious consequence. It's had political effects for the United States in relation to its relationship with Latin America. It's had political effects in relation to the relationship between the UK and Ecuador. It's had political effects in relation to Sweden. So it's not like this is a cost-free exercise. There's considerable costs. The UK government states that it's spending around $6 million per year just in the surveillance of me in this embassy alone.
Okay then.
I'll just say that of course the DOJ has a political technique. It has a theory about how it's going to, separate the herd, to take WikiLeaks off to the side for a beating, and perhaps leave the New York Times and our other partners alone. So what is its theory? Okay, so its theory seems to be based on the warrants and some statements it's made that WikiLeaks is different. Why is WikiLeaks different? Because WikiLeaks dealt with the source. WikiLeaks, if you like, brought in the fish that we then published and we shared with others in the media in order to get more eyeballs and better analysis. And therefore WikiLeaks is different in this way. Well, while that may be of some salve to the New York Times and the Guardian and Le Monde and the more than 100 other publishing partners that we have, it shouldn't be. Because it's not just about who is swept up into this particular prosecution. This prosecution will set precedents. It will set precedents about what is tolerable behavior by the DOJ. And if it is tolerable behavior in law and politically for the administration to go after publishers and go after their sources and say that every interaction between a national security journalist and their source is a conspiracy in general, and a conspiracy to commit espionage, and the passing of electronic information falls under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act Section 1A, electronic terrorism. If national security journalism is electronic terrorism and espionage, then that is the end of national security journalism in the United States. And we like to joke that if that happens, well, all sources will just have to come to WikiLeaks.
Very true. Okay, so moving on, our next question comes from Deplorable777, lovely handle, who asks, with all the talk of fake news, do you feel that makes your publications more desirable since you have a 100% accuracy record?
Come on, where'd you get that question from?
It's right in front of me. No, it's really here.
Okay. Yes, we're very proud of it. We have a 100% accurate record for authenticating documents. We're the world experts in this now. There's literally no one who has authenticated as many leaked documents as we have especially digital leaked documents. So we have a lot of forensic expertise, etc. It's a pain because it's a very valuable reputation. It takes a lot of time to keep it and to not make a mistake. But when we saw this fake news narrative going around, of course there's all sorts of sites in Macedonia and blogs and so on pushing particular agendas, very, very sloppy, etc. But also there's a lot of inaccurate reporting in the legacy press and in new media. A lot of very, very poor reporting, inaccurate or not corrected when inaccuracies are found out. We see this all the time. Just speaking for myself personally, for example, constantly we see articles saying that I have been charged with an offence, which is false, at least in relation to Sweden. It is false. I have never been charged. Constantly we see that. That's a black and white thing. Either you are or you aren't. We see that all over the place in the biggest outlets. So the reality is most media doesn't do basic fact-checking. And when we see this discussion about fake news and potential lists of organizations being put up that are reliable or they're not reliable, we're like, this is a great narrative. This is an excellent narrative because any such list of reliable news we're going to be at the top of, and any list of fake news we're going to be at the bottom of. I don't want to kind of criticize the rest of the press too much. We do something that's easier. We do something that's very hard, which is to discover and publish documents, which are the hardest to discover and the hardest to publish. On the other hand, in terms of authentication, it's a black and white criteria for us. Either the document is an official document, is an official archive, or it isn't. This is black and white criteria. And so you really drill down and focus down on that. You can answer that question in a definite way, which is not the same if you're speaking to witnesses and reporting what they say.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and on this same sort of topic, and I realise you can't talk too much about the inner workings, but a user INA asks, would you still publish info if your source instructed WikiLeaks to redact certain info or redacted it themselves?
Yeah, definitely with the former. We've had that a number of times where the source has asked for particular things to be redacted, especially, say, related to information that might expose who the source is or the work colleagues of the source that they want to protect. On the second part, if there was a request to redact information for political purposes, it's not something that we've had yet. It's an interesting question, but we just haven't had it yet. I mean, I hope we could discourage the source from making that request, but so far we haven't had it.
Sure, okay. Okay, and on a different topic, but again about publications, you announced WikiLeaks would publish on Google in 2017. Can we expect something soon?
You can expect a nice publication on Google in 2017. We have a lot of upcoming publications. I don't want to say which one's first. Actually, it might surprise some of you, but we often don't. Even I don't know which one we're going to do first. It does depend on what's in the news and what's taking up the news cycle, or is a company or government department prominent for some other reason.
Okay, and just moving back to Europe again for a bit, because obviously we have a worldwide audience. In the last days, there's been a growing tension between Trump and the EU Union, specifically Angela Merkel. Would you like to comment on that?
I mean, once again, we published this great material about National Security Agency and BND, which is the German NSA equivalent, 60,000 pages, about a month ago. Great stuff. You can see it on our front page. It has an excellent cartoon. And there was initially a false allegation, or rather allegation which had no evidence, put out saying that Russia was behind this. Now there's a claim that, now the German parliament makes the claim that it thinks it's not Russia. In fact, it's sure it's not Russia. So those narratives are going to be spoken about, but I mean, I don't have a comment about Trump versus Merkel. I do say with Trump, his behavior as someone who's not a diplomat at all, making inflammatory statements or saying what he genuinely thinks, that most politicians and people in senior roles would not. I think from a journalistic perspective is very interesting, because those kinds of conflicts, say between Merkel and Trump, allow you to examine, they create a market, they create an audience that is receptive for information about Merkel in the United States, and an audience in Germany that is receptive for information about Trump. So the general phenomena is quite, I'm not saying it's good government or good diplomacy, but from WikiLeaks perspective, we like to see this kind of churn and invigoration and everything being reconsidered.
Mm-hmm. And okay, we have a few questions on this subject as well. What would be the impact of your freedom on WikiLeaks and WikiLeaks publications? And just following on from that, was your detention an attempt to shut down WikiLeaks?
Well, I've had a number of detentions. There was a very unusual letter sent by the Crown Prosecution Service in 2011, which was to their counterparts in Sweden, which was, don't worry, we're not treating his extradition like a normal extradition case. And, well, there's quite a lot of material, actually. You should go to justiceforassange.com. It's Justice for Assange, numeral 4, and you can read all about that. When you're involved in a situation like this yourself, what you see is that when the politics becomes significant enough, then everything becomes political. And in terms of political philosophy, it makes perfect sense, which is that the various institutions within a state, such as the judiciary, are functions of the state, and the state is a result of two things: a political process and a security process. That is what constructs and maintains the state in the first place. So if the security aspect becomes too high, or the political aspect becomes too high, then the rule of law starts to become very rubbery and can eventually be swept aside. Now that's happened, I suppose, in a positive sense with the Chelsea Manning clemency, but it does happen frequently in the negative sense, and that's the case for me.
Okay, and obviously you're an Australian citizen, and we have several questions from what I assume is Australian users, all asking, what can the Australian government do to help you, as is surely their duty?
I mean, Australia is a sad state. It's a sad thing. It's perfectly understandable. It's a colonial country, population just over 20 million, speaks English, and is in the middle of nowhere. So the result is it's not near its close friends culturally. It's in the Five Eyes alliance with UK, Australia, New Zealand, the white Christian English-speaking countries. And unfortunately, it doesn't have a foreign policy. It doesn't have an independent foreign policy. Its foreign policy cues taken from the United States and from the United Kingdom, with which it is deeply integrated in terms of its military and intelligence services. That's a sad thing. Anyway, it's something that's affected not just me, it's affected a number of Australians who've been imprisoned overseas in, um, in say the United States, but also in other states that the Australian government wants to have a security relationship with. It essentially abandons them, has done so in this case. In fact, the Australian intelligence services gave information to the United States. They looked into cancelling my passport. The then Prime Minister said that I was engaged in illegal acts, and all those that was found to be untrue. So an Australian investigation found that I had broken no Australian law. I've won the Peak Journalism Prize in Australia, the Walkley. But although there's popular support in Australia and support in the press and a lot of support in the legal community, the government so far has done nothing. But there might be some change. There's a little bit of talk in Parliament that perhaps things should change.
Okay, we will have to, I hope you can possibly stay for one or two more questions, but we will have to wrap it up shortly. A subject that's a lot in the news recently is, of course, about fake news. The Dark Knight asks, what do you think about Facebook's attempts to fight fake news?
It's super interesting. I mean, it's not something that's really I can put in a soundbite. It's, we're talking about the ecosystem of information flow in modern civilization that Facebook forms an important part of. And Facebook, as it became rich, has integrated, like many large companies, with, for want of better words, the US establishment, so other large companies dealing with the State Department, etc. And it was more or less, I suppose Peter Thiel is an exception on the Facebook board, but it was more or less in the tank for Clinton as far as Facebook ownership and management were concerned. So of course they didn't like to see that Facebook was spreading a lot of stories critical of the candidate that they had backed. Now, some of those were fake, genuinely fake stories, but I don't want to speak about statistics. I assume the majority were true, and there was our information, which is definitely true. So there's a breaking of one of the most important control structures in a democracy, and that is who controls the media and the effects that the media has on people reading it. So you can look at, work by Chomsky and Herman, which you can sum up with just one phrase, that as the truncheon is to dictatorship, the media system is to democracy. That is, that if you don't want to use a truncheon to keep people in line, you need to use their perceptions to keep them in line. So what is involved in managing people's perceptions? Well, traditionally that's who controls publishing and broadcasts. And now organizations like Facebook are permitting many people to publish billions at the click of a button. So that is obviously breaking down the control structure. Now the control structure is there for bad reasons, and it is there for good reasons. The bad reasons are principally to keep whatever the ruling class is in any particular country in rule. And the good reasons are, well, maybe some of those rules are for good reasons. So the control structure is breaking down. And Facebook's traditional position of being quite frightened of being accused of manipulating the priorities of what you see for reasons other than you paying the money has resulted in more or less, I know there's a lot of exceptions, but more or less fair distribution of what people think to each other. But when you have more or less fair distribution of what people think to each other, that is a new circumstance. in a democracy. And so it is something else must change, because the structures of a democracy, the relative powers of different institutions and cultural norms exist in an equilibrium which is mediated by information flow structures. And when the information flow structures significantly change, the other parts of society must also change to enter into a new equilibrium. But before the new equilibrium is established, there is a disequilibrium. And part of the election of Donald Trump is that phenomena taking place.
Okay, thank you very much. And I hope you'll allow me to just finish on a slightly lighter note. We have a lot of users who are asking about Embassy Cat and the inactivity of its account. Perhaps for people who don't understand what we're discussing here, you could just explain briefly who is Embassy Cat and the situation with their Twitter feed.
Oh no. Okay. So it's, you know, I'm not going to lie, it's a tough situation to be illegally kept in an embassy for 4.5 years, despite the UN saying that you're unlawfully detained. It's tough on me, it's tough on my young children. I have a family under the age of 10. And so they were concerned about me, and so they got me a cat. I mean, it's a bit pathetic. It's not a replacement for your family. But interestingly, psychologically, actually, it's quite good. That's why you give long-term prisoners cats, who if they're lifers, for example. So it's, and all the the staff that come in the embassy in the day, they all dote on the cat, etc. But yeah, sure, we have a Twitter account, twitter.com/embassycat for the cat, with a kind of publication intensity over the last few months, Ecuador cutting off the internet briefly, etc. There's been a lot of other stuff going on, so we haven't had time to take and publish as many cat photos as we'd like.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, thank you, Julian Assange, publisher, editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for all that you do.
Thanks.